hello again. As usual, I've been looking around the internet and seeing what I can find that's conspiracy or ET UFO related. I heard someone mention that Mick West had interviewed Luis Elizondo. You know, he was running the ATIP program for the Pentagon, and he then went to the TTSA. And I have to say, I watched this. I watched the first few minutes of this, and Mick West asked him a perfectly simple question that right at the beginning of the interview, and it was something like, "What do you think they are?" And he went into this monologue, and I sort of drifted off. I thought this is going to be completely pointless watching this, and I think Mick West got that impression that he was wasting his time right at that point, but he persevered. So hats off to Mick West, and I returned to it and watched all of it. I didn't think I was going to do that. I thought it was going to be a complete waste of time, and it pretty much was. I mean, all Luis Elizondo ever really says is, well, there's more to it than the bit that you've debunked, but I can't share that with you. And as Mick West quite rightly says, well, you know, we've got to analyse what's being presented, and when you do that, it's not anything extraordinary. Now, this is just a little clip, and I hope Mick West doesn't mind, but I think this sums it up. In the last few minutes of this interview, this sums it up.
But the government is trying. And I think that when you apply, you know, the talent and resources that we had available, it paints a very compelling picture. Do we have the interest? No, that's why they're called UAPs. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what we're dealing with. And maybe it is, in some cases, you know, something that can be conventionally explained. In these three cases, I beg to differ.
Okay, so there is Mr. Elizondo telling Mick West and telling us all that they don't know what they're dealing with. Now, this is the guy that ran the ATIP program for the Pentagon. They have no idea what they're dealing with. They don't know their ETs. Well, this tells you they don't know what they're dealing with. That tells you that Roswell was a balloon, doesn't it? They haven't got a UFO in a shed. No one's back engineering alien spacecraft in a shed in Nevada or anywhere else. And someone said the other day, and I thought it was quite interesting, that Luis Elizondo had left the ATIP program so he could pursue ufology full-time. He could be a full-time UFO investigator. Now, if that was me, and I worked for the government, and I was investigating this sort of stuff in the government, I would see all kinds of classified material that Mr. Elizondo says that he can't talk about, he can't show us, that would not be available to a civilian. So why would somebody in that position say, okay, I'm going to quit, I'm going to go and work with a rock and roll star, probably because he can pay me more money, and all I've got to do is tell everybody that this UFO ET thing is real. But if I was a serious investigator, I would not be leaving a government department that specialised in investigating this stuff to go out into Civvy Street and then stand on hilltops with binoculars, you know, with Peter Paget or Benjamin Jones, or any of these other quote investigators, close quote marks. Now, yeah, I think that makes no sense whatsoever, but I think it does tell us quite clearly that there is absolutely nothing to the ET hypothesis. Mr. Elizondo has just told us they've got no idea what they're dealing with. Now, if he was running the UFO program, he would be privy to classified information from the past, you would think. You know, when you start a new job, you sort of learn a bit of the history of what's gone before you. And he mentions, you know, he's telling us that there is no tangible evidence of ET visitation, isn't he? What he just said is telling us all very clearly that they don't have any recovered alien spacecraft. They have no extraterrestrial biological samples. In his own words, they have no idea what they're dealing with. So there we go. And I think Mick West was struggling a bit, I think, with this interview, because you could tell that he wanted to actually challenge Mr. Elizondo a little bit more than he actually did, but I think he held off because he didn't want Elizondo to pull the plug. He wanted to get as much out of him as he possibly could in the hour that Elizondo made available to him. And I think he did a pretty good job. So I think it was Mick West was walking a bit of a tightrope, and I think he did as good a job as could be done under those circumstances. I thought Mr. Elizondo's answers were vague. He can always fall back on, well, I can't talk about that. I've signed a non-disclosure agreement with the American government, and of course it's all too convenient, isn't it? It's a shame Mick West didn't actually ask him what happened to all the money the TTSA got for building their starship. The other thing too was Elizondo said he's not an engineer, and he seemed a little bit confused about what some of the imagery was all about. So it makes me wonder what expertise he actually took to ATIP or the TTSA. And I think Mick West would have liked to have asked him that, but refrained, because he would have been offended at that question. But I was going to say, personally, I would have asked him that. A couple of things that Mick West had to explain to him. I thought, yeah, okay. And he said he's not an engineer. We need to get engineers to look at these things. So, if he's not an engineer, what expertise did he take to the TTSA and the ATIP? He holds up a load of cards and says, well, this is what aircraft look like. We have to learn all these, all these foreign aircraft from 5 views, front, back, top, bottom, and left or right. Apparently doesn't seem to matter. He didn't say 6 views. Okay, well, anyone can look at a card and memorise it and say, yeah, okay, all right, well, that looks like a MiG, MiG 29 to me, or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, what expertise precisely did Mr. Elizondo take to ATIP? What expertise made the TTSA hire him specifically, if he can't talk about anything he saw in the government? And if the government really have no idea what they're dealing with, why would you bother? Why would you hire that guy? And Mick West asked a really good question. He said, with regard to the Go Fast UFO, and he said, is the information displayed on the heads-up display that we see on the F-18, I think it was, incorrect? Because if you do the math, it shows that it's not a fast-moving low object, it's a slow-moving high object. And Elizondo didn't really have an answer for that. He just said, well, all I can tell you is the people told me that it was low and fast. So he didn't answer the question. He just said, well, that's something we'd have to look into, to see if the information shown on the head-up display was inaccurate. I think they'll be a lot more careful about anything they release in future, because they'll know there'll be people like Mick West out there ready to look at that sort of stuff and do the math. Now, Mick West said it's a pretty simple math problem. Apparently others have looked at it and got a different result. Now, I'm going to have a look at Mick West's video, and my math is a bit rusty. I haven't had much to do with math for a very long time, but I wasn't bad at it, so I think I'll have a look at it, and I'll see if I come up with the same answer as Mr. West, or if I come up with the same answer as is it Thunderfoot and some other guy? I'll have to have a look at what they've got to say, of course, and see if I come up with any of that, or come up with something completely different. Anyway, very short video. I just thought it was worth mentioning. I hope Mick West doesn't mind. I think you did an excellent job there, Mr. West. Considering what you had to work with, I think you actually put in your comments as a pinned comment that Mr. Elizondo said he can't find time to do another hour. I think at the end of this video he said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'd love to. I'd love to do another answer all your questions," and then told Mick West that he's changed his mind. He doesn't have time. Obviously he sat back and watched it and thought that he wasn't coming across as being terribly credible or terribly interesting. So there we go. That's my 2 bobs worth on the Mick West interview with Luis Elizondo. As always, thanks for watching. Maybe I'll catch you again.